All right, getting started with the design of our bridges, we need to get our ideas out onto paper. So all the possibilities, the things that come through our brains to hopefully later develop, needs to be shared, and we're going to use a sketch sheet. In the case of this sketch sheet, we have 12 possible spaces for our designs. These are rough ideas, rough sketches, and so they shouldn't take particularly long. The idea is to just get anything that comes comes through your brain out onto the paper in a way that we can later refine and later develop. And we'll spend plenty of time refining and developing those ideas. So right now it's just trying to get ideas onto paper. So a few terms that you need to know in order to do this assignment. You need to understand that anything, actually let's get started at the beginning, that the middle of these sections of graph paper, each of these designs has a dark line on it. In this case it's black, it's all black and white. But the dark line down the middle of the graph paper is considered your roadbed. Anything that exists above that, the structure that tries to support this roadbed, the area that you would walk or drive, put train tracks across, whatever the purpose of that roadbed, whatever you're supporting, it gets supported above with a superstructure. Anything that falls below it is a substructure. And these are two terms that I will be using to try and direct your attention to a location that needs some extra work or maybe a revision or we can improve. So super and substructure are terms you need to be familiar with, and the idea that the roadbed goes right down the middle, that's the part we're trying to support from above or below with our super and substructures. So some basic information with regards to the spaces on this page. In addition, on this sheet of paper, we need to start our superstructure all the way on the left end and then all the way on the right end of the graph paper. So if this is the far left edge of our graph paper, that's where we want to start. The far right edge of the paper is where we want to end for our superstructure. The substructure is a little bit different because, well, it can't go out into the ground that it's actually sitting on. The substructure sits inside the opening, inside that gap, that valley that we're trying to bridge across. So the substructure must fit inside the triangles for this portion of our design process, our creation. So the length is slightly different between those two structures, super and sub. The height, you can use the maximum height of the graph paper or the small portions of graph that are designed for each of these designs. So you can go as high as the superstructure graph paper or as low as the substructure graph paper allows in this brainstorming portion of our activity. So some information needs to get out of the way before we get started. Now, some options. I'm going to give you a few quick options, very common options. You probably don't see a whole lot of these unless you're looking for the right types of bridges in your daily lives. I promise you they are around and you will find them if you keep your eyes open to them. But some design possibilities, some things, some very basic structures that you can then elaborate upon, and that all of these up top across the front of the room have some aspect of one of these designs in them. So the first structure that I want to talk about is a king post. King post is a simple triangle. Gets its name from having that one triangle broken into two smaller triangles, and that's where the king post name comes from, is that central structural element right down the middle. Are we done with the king post? You could be done at this point. Very simple structure. I've had people in the past come through, or students in the past come through and try to add additional information that would potentially make it stronger, or additional structure that makes it stronger. In this case, adding those extra dotted lines, those extra elements, would make the triangle smaller. If that's something that you think is important, in either case, it still meets the triangular and symmetrical requirements that we will have for all of our structures. So, is this triangular? Absolutely. Any part of this is surrounded by three sides. So if I drop my marker, I would be surrounded by three surfaces, not 4 or 5 or 6. So it is triangular. One of the rules that we're trying to follow is that all of our designs must be triangular. It's symmetrical because, well, the reason I'm giving you the king post idea is that it's always symmetrical, whether it's the two triangles or in this case now 8 smaller triangles. It is symmetrical about that midpoint, that middle line of symmetry. Common glue joints we're not worried about yet. Next design, we'll talk about the Pratts next. A Pratt structure starts out rectangular. And we know we do not want a rectangle to be our structure because it's four-sided. And we got to do something to simplify this, to change it a little bit. So if I put a midline, a simple Pratt could just be one midline and connecting the diagonals, turning your rectangles, your boxes, into triangles by just connecting the diagonals. The diagonals must be connected in a fashion that keeps them symmetrical. So this one goes top left to bottom right. This one goes bottom left to top right. Along the midpoint, we are symmetrical, so this is a good design. Pratt structures are typically a little more complicated than that. The rectangles are typically a little bit shaped a little bit differently. So I'll split this in half, then I'll split it in half again. A few options. We could go the first two the same direction, we could flip it, or we could just alternate it throughout the entire structure. It's really up to you, as long as it's symmetrical about that midpoint and the diagonals are connected to create triangles, you are getting the effect of the Pratt structure. One interesting thing that you'll start to see if you take a look around the room is that oftentimes these designs can be combined. So a Pratt structure could have a king post sitting on top of it, or a Pratt structure in the superstructure could have a king post in the substructure, flipped over probably for the substructure. But these ideas can all be combined and worked in different ways, so that way you can meet your own needs and desires, what you think is interesting, make it completely custom. All right, one more that I want to add is a Warren. Warren gets its name from this, well, obviously the person that named it, person was named after, but it has a W shape, which helps me remember what the Warren looks like. And my triangles aren't perfect. Typically these triangles are isosceles or equilateral triangles. So if these triangles have similar sides and similar shape to them, we end up with very nice, neat triangles that tuck in on top of one another. So Warren can have, in this case we have, 5 triangles. This could be as simple as 3 triangles, and it could go all the way out to many, many more triangles than that. But in either case, these triangles should be similar in size. And then finally, we will end with K-truss. And this gets its name from the letter K appearing in the design. So if I break this up, this starts out very much like the Pratt, and then we can create the letter K in these openings. Wherever you create these letter Ks, they must be symmetrical. So in this case, these are left facing, these Ks will be right facing. So I get it, they started out backwards, now they're forwards. And along the line of symmetry in the middle, we are symmetrical. This can very quickly and easily have its direction changed, and just by playing a little bit with the letter K and the shape and the direction of the letter Ks, we can get kind of diamond shapes creating in the middle of our design. In either case, as long as they're created symmetrically, and I know that wasn't symmetrical, those aren't hitting the midpoint, but we're getting that K shape pointing left or right, stuff that you can pull some information from. 4 basic structures that you can work into all of your designs. One thing you will not see is one piece of information that I'm not providing you with or giving you is the creation of X designs. Please try to avoid X's. These X's have very awkward glue joints in here. And if you have an awkward, not a very strong glue joint, then you're just weakening the entire structure. So we're trying to give ourselves a lot of potential out of our glue joints, and as a result, hopefully a whole lot of strength, because our glue joints are strong and we are relying on tension. In either case, the 2 things we must be following with our sketches is it must be triangular and it must be symmetrical. I'm going to say that it should probably take you 90 seconds, maybe up to 2 minutes in time to complete one of these sketches, so it should move pretty quickly. You need a superstructure and a substructure for all of them. So that's 12 superstructures and 12 substructures on this sheet. We will check it, or I want to check it after you complete the first 4. Make sure everything's going right, everything looks good. We'll approve it, and then you'll move on to the back of the sheet, back of the assignment. So make sure that it gets checked before you move on and complete the rest of the work. I don't need 12 designs that are not going to work.